Hey everyone, and welcome to a special edition of Can You Hack It? I'm your host, Ben, and as many of you may have noticed, I've been away from Hack the Box for a while now. Unfortunately, like happens sometimes, life got in the way. But I found myself a little bit of time this week, and so I started getting back into Hack the Box. And when I did, I realized that my workspace, the directory that I work out of, how I structure things, is kind of a mess. And so I wanted to come up with a cleaner way to do that. And in the process, I realized that it would be nice to have programmatic access to Hack the Box. So to be able to access it from the command line or from a script. So I could get things, like the names of boxes or the status of boxes or start or stop them. Now, in the past, I took a stab at creating a project that did this, but because it required a lot of scraping of web pages, it just wasn't worth the effort for me, and so I kind of scrapped it. This time around, I noticed that there's a lot of back-end REST API endpoints that the website works with. And so I mapped out a lot of those endpoints, figured out how they worked, and started creating a Python module called HTB-Client. And so this video is going to kind of cover what HTB-Client is. And then I'm also going to show another project that I've created called HTB-Repo. And what HTB-Repo is it's just kind of a skeleton for how I want my directory that I work out of for Hack the Box challenges to be organized. Now, HTB-Repo makes use of HTB-Client to do things like get lists of the machines, because it can actually create a directory for each machine along with some metadata and scripts to get things started. And so let's go ahead and start taking a look. I don't want to spend the time to script this all out, the video. So hopefully I'll cover everything and it'll all make sense. If it doesn't, leave a comment and I'll try and explain it better. Both of these projects are going to be public and they both still need a good amount of work. So expect a lot of changes over the coming weeks. Feel free to make requests or report bugs. So let's just go ahead and get started. So the first thing we'll do is just kind of take a look at how you would interact with HTB-Client. So I have it installed on my system. So if I just type in HTB, get used to saying HTTP. I could do something like -- assigned, which I think in this case isn't going to show me anything because I don't have any boxes spawned currently. This is a good time to mention also, this has only been tested with my account, which is a VIP account. And so some of these things may not work well or as well with the free accounts. I don't really know. I'll try and set up a free account and then run through all this stuff to make sure that I kind of handle these things properly so that you don't have any issues. But we could do something like HTB list all, to list all of the boxes that are available. And so it goes out and gets them. In this case right now, I'm just printing out some basic information, the machine name, the IP address, and the ID of the machine. The ID is actually not that important, so I'll probably end up reworking this so that it shows things that are a little more useful. The ID is used a lot behind the scenes by the REST API, but you as a user don't use it. And so let's just do this again so I can get the help. So another thing you can list is you could list like all of the boxes that you haven't done yet. So incomplete. And that'll go out. It'll get a list of the boxes. It'll check to see if you've owned user or root on them. In this case, if you haven't owned user, or like if one or the other isn't done or both aren't done, it'll show up in the list. Conversely, you could get all the ones that you've owned root on. And so basically, this just allows you to do a lot of that stuff. If I wanted to start up a box, let's get a list of the active machines. So active just means the ones that aren't retired in this case. I try and keep the terminology similar to Hack the Box. That way you don't have any internal mappings that you got to do in your head or something. So in this case, let's say player 2. Actually, we can check also. We can do spawned so I can see which ones are actually running. That way I can spawn one that isn't running. And so we can see in the list here that player 2 isn't spawned. So I could tell it to start player 2, and it doesn't, capitalization here doesn't matter. I could do like that. It should work just the same. So it's going to go out and make a request. Now, this part right now, I think is just going to return a raw REST response. That's what I mean by there's a lot of work to do. I want to kind of parse a lot of this stuff out and give you responses that are a little more helpful than just showing you a REST response when it's done. Certain calls like this I've noticed also take a bit of time. The reason they take a bit of time is I think on the back end it's going out and it's starting up the VM. And so in this case it's done. It returns a status code 200, which is just your regular HTTP status. And then the response says success 1, status machine deployed to lab. And so now if we got a call for active, which I'll give it a second just to make sure that it's actually up and running, because it takes somewhere between like 10 and 20 seconds, it seems like. So we'll see if it's active now. Or sorry, I didn't mean to say active, I meant to say spawned. Again, active is things that haven't been retired. Spawned is machines that are actually running in the lab right now that you can access. And so now we can see at the bottom that player 2 is indeed active. We can also see that it's assigned to us if we did a assign. And so that would return the IP address and an ID for it. And so that's basically that's going to keep getting me. That's basically HTB-Client. And so HTB-Client I really didn't mean to make as a CLI tool. That it happens to be there right now because it helps me test out the module itself. My original intent was to kind of just use it inside of other projects. But I figured since I was writing all this stuff to test it, it's probably useful enough, at least for somebody, that I'll kind of clean it up a lot and keep it packaged with it so that you can use it as a CLI tool without having to write any software. And so I'll go ahead and in this case tell it to stop, which will have it stop the machine that's assigned to me. Right now you can only have one machine that's assigned to you at a time. And so stop doesn't take an argument for what it wants you to stop. It figures it out on its own. If that ever changes, I'll have to rework this so that you say stop and what machine you want to stop. But again, as of right now, it doesn't matter. And if you're interested in seeing the code of HTB-Client, it's available on GitHub in my repo. So it's, I'll just type it down here instead, https://github.com, bgruel, HTB-Client. And so if you just go there, which I'll put a link in the video description also, you can see the source code. I won't do a walkthrough in this video just because I feel like most people probably don't care. And it's likely to change a fair amount between the time that I make this video and the time that you watch this video. So I'll just go ahead and give you a link to see the source code itself if you want to walk through it. And if there's enough interest for some reason, which I assume there won't be, then I can make a video that kind of walks people through stuff. But for now, I feel like it's self-explanatory enough. So what we can do now is start taking a look at HTB-Repo. And hopefully this will go correct because I haven't actually tried this out on my local system here. And so it'll be the first time I actually try it. We'll change directories into like, I think I have a directory called security. Yeah, there's nothing in here. So we'll clone the repo into here. So like if you look here, here's the project. It's again in bgruel HTB-Repo. And it basically right now just has like some folders, which is kind of sloppy. I got little .keep files to make it so that they actually get checked in to Git even though they are empty. Again, there's probably better ways to do that, but machines folder is empty. The reason it's empty is update.py. Does a lot of building of that. Repo tools, the name of this will probably change. It's got a control script that utilizes HTB-Client to do some control stuff, which we'll see in a second. So what I'll do is go ahead and just clone this. Git clone. So at least that part went smooth. There's also a decent getting started guide on here. Again, I got to do some cleanup on it, but it tells you how to clone the repo, change directory, how to switch the remote repo to your own if you want to keep your repository in somewhere like GitHub so that you can access it from multiple machines. If you do that, as I pointed out here, make the repository private. Don't post things, don't have a repository with a bunch of your notes and tools and other things publicly available on the internet. It spoils things for people. If they're going out and they're Googling to try and find a hint or something like that, and they end up coming across your repo that has the solution, it's no fun for everybody. So please make sure it's private. So the first thing we're going to need to do is just switch into HTB-Repo. If you do an ls, we can see here that we've got the folder structure, the readme, a requirements.txt file, and an update.py. Now, you could use a virtual environment if you want. You don't have to if you don't want to. I prefer to use them. So first thing you need to do is just create one. Python 3-m venv. And I'll just call it venv also. You can call it whatever you want. So here you could put any value. And that should create a virtual environment for you. So now if I do an ls, you'll notice that there's a virtual environment folder. Next thing you need to do is just source it. So source venv bin activate. On Windows, it's bash script a script that you need to execute. I don't know that this stuff actually works on Windows. I haven't tried it. You're welcome to try it. At some point I will try it and try and make it so that it works on Windows also, although my assumption is most people work from Linux, and even when they work from Windows, they work from some, Windows subsystem for Linux or something like that. So when I activate it, you notice at the end of my shell, I show venv in parentheses, so that's just showing that we're active in the virtual environment. So commands that we do for Python will end up getting executed in this virtual environment. So packages we install, things like that, they won't be system-wide. They'll be specific to this particular virtual environment. So the next thing we need to do is install our packages that are required. So if we do pip3 install -r requirements.txt, and requirements.txt has captured all of the requirements that this project has. And so you can see it's installed beautiful soup, certify, HTBClient, a bunch of other stuff. And so in this case, everything installed just fine. And actually, I noticed that I need to update the version of HTBClient that's required for it, because right now it's grabbing an older version, which is fine. It should work just fine, because that's the latest one I've tested it with, but there is a newer version out than that. And so what we can do next is run update.py, but before I do that, I'm actually going to pull it up. Oh, I don't have the code open for it. Well, we can pull it up on the web browser. And then we can take a look. So basically, I'm not going to go through the details on what it does. Essentially, it looks to see if there's already a directory in the machines folder that's named after whatever the machine is that it was able to get from, let me back up a little second. So it gets a list of the machines from HackTheBox. This is all of the machines that are up right now. It's active, it's retired. I think it's about 150-ish. And then what it does is it goes through that list of machines. It checks to see if you already have a directory inside of the machines folder that's named after the machine, in all lowercase. If you don't, then it creates a bunch of directories. It creates a meta directory, which is a hidden directory. I don't know that many people will use this. The reason I put it there is it's got some flags and stuff in there that I can use to filter when I'm searching. So like if I'm searching for folders where I've started them, then I can search based on certain stuff like that. And so it's just a bunch of little metadata, which I'll show later. The create scan creates a folder for scanning, mostly in map right now, but other scanning tools could also go in there. Tokens, directory for tokens, so things like SSH keys or usernames and passwords. I just like to keep all of that stuff in a separate place rather than having just a directory that has everything in it, because I find that my naming conventions get a little weird and sometimes it becomes hard to figure out where I put certain things. Tools. is a folder for me to put tools in that I either wrote for the machine, the binary versions of them, or things that I downloaded to use for the machine, or things that are specific to the machine and aren't something that I typically have on my box. Create notes creates a notes or a markdown file in the root of the machine directory where I can keep my notes. Create scripts creates the scripts folder, which has some helper scripts for things like starting the machine, stopping the machine, resetting the machine, putting in the capturing it, so doing the owns of user and root. And then create source creates a folder for you to keep source code in for tools that you're writing that are specific to the machine. So like for buffer overflow or something, I may have a file in there that contains my exploit code. Or again, my goal here was to make it so that things are a little more organized for me. I have a tendency when I get into stuff to take shortcuts because I just want to get it done, and that ends up making things turn into a mess, especially if I've got something where I'm trying like exploit code and I'm trying different revisions of it and I want to keep a certain version, but I want to make some changes. I'll usually make a copy of it, and half the time the names get all screwed up. And anyway, it turns into a mess. So I made this to kind of keep myself, or to help myself keep from making a mess. And so if we just run update.py, it should go through and start creating directories for each machine that we don't have a directory for already, which we don't have a directory for anything. So you can see here that it's created a bunch of directories. If we go into the machines folder, do a ls-la, we can see a folder for each machine that's up on HackTheBox now. And so if we just change directories into one of these, like we'll do Ellingson, and we do ls-la in here, we can see in init.sh, we can see that meta directory I was talking about, which is .meta. We can see notes.md, which is the markdown file. You can see the scan, script, source, tokens, and tools directories. So if we did something like cat notes.md right now, notes.md, I just kind of fill out a little bit of a skeleton. So it's got Ellingson notes, and then it's got the ID of the box and the IP address of the box. That'll probably change to be a little bit more verbose. As I'll show you in a second in the meta directory, we get a lot more information about the box than just that. So since Markdown's fairly easy to read and scroll around in, probably make it so that all of the stuff that we get on the box ends up in there, just in case it's valuable to people. So if we do something like try and ping Ellingson now, I don't think Ellingson is running, so we won't get a reply. Actually, let me take a look real quick. I'll pause this and make sure I'm connected. And I am connected. And so we're getting our destination host unreachable now. So we can cancel that. So now I could do HTB start Ellingson. But one of the things that we created is in our scripts folder. Or here, let me do an ls in there. ls scripts. So in our scripts folder, we created a bunch of scripts automatically. One called extend, one called own, one called start, stop, and to do. To do adds it to your to-do list. Technically, it toggles it in your to-do list, so if it's already in there, it would remove it. That'll change later. So what we can do is just use start in our scripts folder. So we do scripts start, and we don't need to pass the name of the box because it knows the name of the box since it was created automatically when we did our update. And so what it's doing now is it's going out and it's going to start the box. By the way, I didn't cover this, but if you wonder how it's able to do this on my account, it's because I have environmental variables set with my username and password for HackTheBox. An alternative to that, if you didn't want to do that, is you can... sorry, I've got a bunch of dinging going on in the background. If you didn't want to do that, you can pass it as username and password at the command line. But personally, I like to just do that stuff with environmental variables. Technically, you could hard code it too if you wanted to. But again, be careful with that if you're going to be posting stuff because you may accidentally expose your credentials when you didn't mean to. And so it shows now that the machine's been deployed to the lab. So we start pinging again. We can see that now the machine is up and running. And so this was kind of one of the big reasons I wanted to create these tools is because I don't want to have to go to the website and start the machine. There's certain stuff I'm not going to try and abstract because there is good reason to go to the website for a lot of this stuff. But some of the more mundane tasks like starting and stopping machines, I just wanted to make easier to do. Actually, I was going to say, technically, you wouldn't even need to run the start command from the script directly. I should have, and this is what happens when I don't script it. So we cat init.sh. What init.sh is doing is it's creating a meta file, just an empty file called initialized, to let me know that it's been initialized. And then it's adding it to my to-do list, and it's starting it. I won't run this in this case, but that would have been the intended way to do it. But since I've still been working on this, it's not really solidified yet. Another thing that we got scripts for is stuff like scanning. So we did scan nmap. We've got two options: nmap scans. Nmap quick and nmap full. So we did nmap quick. What this is going to do is it's going to run an nmap with the quick setting. So it's just nmap with an aggressive timing, and it outputs everything automatically into scans /nmap/ and then if it's the quick one, it'll be quick dot, and it outputs all three formats. So the XML, the .nmap, and the other one. Same thing with full. Full would automatically put it in nmap full. And so this will finish in a second. I don't have it being verbose at the moment, and I'll show you why in just a second. One is because in our scans directory, we already have all that output, and so we can look at it if we want to. But we also automatically put it in our notes file. So we cat notes now. You'll notice that there's a section called nmap quick scan results, and that contains it also. I may end up putting a flag so that you can pass like a -b or something if you want to be able to see the output in real time. And so that's kind of all there is to it right now. So if you do, I'll walk you through the meta directory first. But if we did like scripts again and stop it, that way we shut down a box that we're not using. Again, it'll take a second. Now it's no longer assigned, and so it should be showing up in our terminating list now. List terminating. And when you use like HTBClient to list terminating, in this case, it's going to show you all of the machines that are terminating, which apparently right now is none of them. So it won't just necessarily be yours. It'll be yours and any other machines that are terminating at this moment. So let's switch into the meta directory real quick. And so right now there's a couple empty files. There's retired. All that means is if that's there, then the box has been retired. There would normally be an empty file called initialized had I run the init.sh script when I started working on the box. So that's just, again, a flag to let me know that I had initialized that box and I've started working on it at least to some degree. Release is the release date. So if you cat release, you can see that the box was released 2019, May 18th. And then box info, MD, and JSON are basically the same thing. The MD is markdown and the JSON is JSON formatted. So if you do cat box info.md. So this is the additional stuff I was talking about I'd probably add to the notes. So we've got the ID, the OS, the IP address, the points, release and retire dates, the fact that it has been retired, who the maker is, in this case both their ID and their name. Again, this may be formatted to be a little bit prettier later, but for right now, it's just a JSON blob. The rating for the box, the number of people that owned user, and the number of people that owned root. And then free, I assume this means that it's available to free users. I haven't actually verified that yet by testing it out, but again, I'll go through at some point and start figuring out some more of these details. But it was a field that was in there, so I display it. So that's about it. Like I said, there will probably be a lot of changes over time coming out with it, or over time as I kind of figure out what I like and what I don't like, and as I get feedback from other users. So hopefully it's something that's valuable to people. It's something that I know I wanted for a long time. It is very early in its development. Like, I've spent maybe a handful of hours on it, so there's likely to be some issues. Please let me know if you're having issues. Go to GitHub, file a bug report. That helps me figure out where they are too, because if people just try and use it, they go, oh shit, this doesn't work, and they stop using it because something didn't work the way that they wanted it to. A, I don't ever hear about it, so I don't get the chance to fix it. And B, if it is a tool that they wanted to use, they may just give up because it's like, well, it doesn't work. And so it's helpful if you just give some feedback, let me know what it is that isn't working, provide as much detail as you can, because sometimes people say things like, I tried to run it and it doesn't work. It's not super helpful. Provide as much as you can so that I can reproduce the issue. Hopefully here soon I'll actually get back to doing walkthroughs on the retired boxes. As of right now, basically everything that's out there that isn't retired, I haven't touched. And so it will at least be a little while before I get back to that. But in the meantime, I'm hoping to kind of get some videos out in between. I still want to get a video out that details the Ellingson box. Not necessarily the box itself, but the binary exploitation for root. Reason for that was I was lazy and didn't make it so that you had to do it a specific way, the way that I intended. And so pretty much everybody that I've seen did it a different way. It's a minor difference. It's pretty nuanced. It's just they leaked directly to, through a print statement versus having to use a second account, which was Hal's account, to create a leak through syslog and then use Hal's account to get the info from that leak in order to write their exploit. It doesn't make it that much harder, but it was a little bit of a curveball. But again, I kind of rushed that box out. Things were getting busy at the point that I was getting ready to publish it, and so I didn't test it as well as I should have. Lesson learned. So hopefully I get a walkthrough on that particular binary exploitation. Sorry, having a hard time speaking apparently. Hopefully I get that out. And then I'm going to also try and get some videos out that kind of walk people through binary exploitation in general, starting from some fairly simple concepts and working our way up. Just because I've noticed that while there's some great stuff out there from like Live Overflow, there's not a lot of people who touch 64-bit stuff. And for the most part nowadays, everything's 64-bit. There's not a whole lot of 32-bit. And when there is 32-bit things, it's pretty contrived. It's a challenge that, somebody came up with at some point and they compiled it in 32-bit. When you come across real software that you're trying to reverse engineer or that you're trying to develop an exploit for, more often than not, it's going to be 64-bit software nowadays. So I felt like coming out with some videos that kind of walk people through that stuff. Maybe some videos also that kind of cover the differences between 32 and 64-bit, because it's not that different, but it's different enough that you might get caught with some of the minor changes. So anyway, I will go ahead and wrap this video up. I hope you find the tools useful, and let me know if there's anything you'd like to see added or anything you'd like to see fixed if it's broken. And hopefully I'll get another video out here within the next couple weeks. So have a good weekend or day or whatever it is, and I'll see you in the next one. Also, make sure if you like these videos to like and subscribe to the channel. That way you get notified when new ones come out. Now I'm really done, so have a good one.